In a movie theater, little Carl Fredrickson, a shy child with spectacles, a pilot's cap, and goggles, is watching a film reel featuring his hero, the renowned explorer Charles Muntz. Before mentioning that Muntz was recently dishonored by scientists who thought his most recent find, a gigantic bird skeleton, was a fraud, the writer discusses Muntz's numerous successes and discoveries. With the intention of proving them wrong, Muntz is shown boarding his Zeppelin with his pack of hounds and making a pledge to return as soon as he is returned with tangible evidence of his discovery. Carl, carrying a balloon that bears the name of Muntz's Zeppelin, the spirit of adventure, sprints down the street after the performance. He overhears someone yelling Muntz's catchphrase as they pass an old, dilapidated house. When Carl enters to look around, he encounters a young tomboy who shares his love of adventure and adoration for Charles Muntz. Carl loses his balloon in the rafters at first, startled by her boisterous, youthful personality. Ellie, the girl, assists him in getting it back even though Carl breaks his arm after falling from a beam. That evening, Ellie sneaks into his bed and shows him her adventure book, in which she expresses a dream to one day live on top of Paradise Falls in South America and displays a photo that she ripped right out of a library book. Before leaving, she demands a promise from him that they will travel together one day. Carl and Ellie finally get married and move into the old house where they originally met in a musical montage. They had a happy marriage and each land a job as a balloon seller or zookeeper. They agree to save money in order to visit Paradise Falls after learning that Ellie is infertile. They are, however, compelled to use their falls fund as additional obligations arise as the years go by. A retired Carl decides to surprise Ellie with tickets to South America on a picnic after realizing that despite their happy marriage, they never kept their vow. But when Ellie's condition deteriorates, she is hospitalized and ultimately dies, leaving Carl all alone. As the city expands around him, Carl stays in his house as a retired and bitter loner. Due to the increasing construction, he is urged to relocate to a retirement community, but he frequently quarrels with the foreman and refuses to do so. One day, Russell, a young wilderness explorer scout, approaches him and offers to help Carl so that he can obtain his assisting the elderly badge. Russell is duped by Carl into helping him by being instructed to locate and remove a snipe that has intruded into his yard. Carl strikes a construction worker over the head with his walker when he accidentally breaks his mailbox, a piece of the house and of Ellie that Carl treasures. He is taken to court after the assault and ordered to leave his house by the following day. The next morning when Shady Oaks staff members come to pick him up, they are horrified to see Carl release millions of helium balloons into the air, which separate his house from its foundation and raise it over the city and into the sky. Carl plots a course towards South America while relaxing comfortably away from the city until he is interrupted by a knock at the door. When he answers, he finds Russell on his porch holding on for dear life. Presumably, Russell had been looking under Carl's porch. Before a strong storm arrives, Carl decides to descend and let him in before sending Russell back home. The house is shaken by the turbulence, but Carl is able to secure most of his belongings before nodding off. The following morning, Russell wakes him up and informs him that they are over South America. Due to a GPS device he unintentionally throws out the window, even though the ground is shrouded in thick fog. When Carl lets go of some balloons, they crash to the ground and are thrown out of the home. When the fog clears, they can see that they are on a high plateau facing Paradise Falls and are holding onto it with the help of a hose that is tied to the porch. They decide to trek to the falls before the helium in the balloons releases because they are unable to climb back inside the house. In the meantime, there is a chase going on in the forest. 3 dogs are hot on the trail of what appears to be a gigantic bird with red lights on their collars, but they lose the scent when their perceptive ears pick up the fine-tuning of Carl's hearing aid. Russell goes to use the restroom and discovers a huge bird that he coaxes into getting closer by offering it a chocolate bar. He introduces Carl to the vibrant creature and gives it the name Kevin. Kevin continues to travel with them, but when they get close to a man's shadow calling to them, he flees. But they realize that the man is nothing more than an optical illusion brought on by overlapping stones. Then a golden retriever with a red light on his collar comes up to them. When Russell instructs him to sit and speak, he is shocked to hear the dog respond using the collar-mounted gadget. Kevin tackles him after he introduces himself as Doug and explains that he is a tracker looking for a bird. Carl is unhappy to have the extra company as the 4 of them continue their adventure. Kevin makes a loud call at one point, to which smaller calls respond. Russell discovers Kevin is a girl when Doug reports that he is calling to her babies. The scent of Carl and Russell, also known as the mailman, has been detected by the 3 dogs that were earlier observed chasing the bird. Beta, a Rottweiler, and Gamma, a Bulldog, are instructed to be watchful and to keep looking by the pack leader Alpha, a Doberman Pinscher. His voice is high-pitched, and it appears that his speaking apparatus is broken. With the use of the gadget on Gamma's collar, Alpha makes a call to Doug, who they had dispatched on a fictitious errand in order to get rid of him, but discovers him traveling with the bird they were hunting. They locate Carl and Russell as they pursue Kevin, but he has already escaped. They instead decide to accompany Carl and Russell to their master. Before meeting the dog's master, who turns out to be none other than an elderly Charles Muntz, Carl and Russell encounter a sizable group of dogs with high-tech collars as they enter a vast ravine. Muntz extends an invitation to them to stay at the Spirit of Adventure, but as soon as he learns that Russell has acquired a new pet bird, he becomes aggressive. Carl is astounded to learn that Muntz has spent the last years searching for the bird for which he was exposed as a fraud and has since gone insane. As he grimly knocks each one off with his cane and recounts the tales their wearers told him, Muntz displays a table of head mannequins sporting varied headgear and claims that each of them was genuinely seeking his bird. Just as Muntz notices the bird screaming out from Carl's home's roof, Carl and Russell flee the Zeppelin. They narrowly avoid being captured by Muntz's dogs while riding on Kevin's back with the help of Doug, who addresses Carl as his new master. Kevin suffers an injury in the process. Carl promises to assist Kevin in returning to her infants in a secure manner, but just as she is about to enter her maze-like home again, a net flies out and traps her. A tracking device on Doug's collar guided Muntz and his dogs to the location, where they arrived in the Zeppelin. Carl's house is set on fire when Muntz throws a lantern below it. As Muntz boards the vehicle and departs, Carl steps in front of Kevin and rushes over to put out the fires. Carl rants at Doug and tells Russell that if it kills him, he'll take his house to Paradise Falls, feeling frustrated and angry. However, he loses Russell's respect for leaving Kevin even though he succeeds in putting his house down on the falls. Carl enters the residence and sits down to read Ellie's adventure book. He is ready to close it, saddened that she never got to see the falls, when he finds more photos near the end that show their relationship. Ellie left a note on the last page that reads, "Thanks for the adventure, now have a new one." Carl steps outdoors, inspired and enlightened, just in time to witness Russell launch a few balloons with the aid of a leaf blower. Carl removes more furniture from his house, relaunching it into the air, and then he follows Russell. He discovers Doug on his doorstep and joyfully announces that he is Doug's owner and that Doug is his dog. Russell succeeds in boarding Muntz's Zeppelin undetected, but he is immediately captured and tied to a chair. As soon as Muntz flips the switch to open the ship's bomb bay doors, he is seated on them. Russell is set inside the home as Carl and Doug board the Zeppelin to retrieve Kevin. Carl flies in and manages to save Russell in time. Using a tennis ball from his walker, he is able to divert the security dogs and release Kevin, but Muntz confronts him. While Russell, freed from his shackles, repels the squadron of dogs and fighter jets, they engage in a sword duel, although Carl uses his extended walker. After taking back possession of the home, he goes back to aid Carl, who has ascended to the Zeppelin's top with Kevin. In the meantime, Doug has defeated Alpha and emerged as the new Alpha by outwitting him. He then departs to meet the others topside. When Muntz emerges with a rifle and shoots at Kevin, Doug, and Carl as they try to reach the house that Russell has placed on the wing of the Zeppelin, the house slips and hangs in the air. While Muntz pursues Kevin, Carl tries to hang onto the house with the hose. Muntz makes an effort to leap out of the window when Kevin, who is carrying Doug and Russell, is lured out of the house by Carl with chocolate. His foot gets stuck in some balloon lines, preventing him from jumping, and because he is too heavy for the balloons to sustain him, he falls to his death. Carl is forced to relinquish his house, which slowly falls into the skies as Kevin, Doug, and Russell return to the Zeppelin. Carl accepts this loss as it is for the best. Carl takes Russell and Doug home, where Russell will attend his senior explorer ceremony. Kevin is given back to her 3 chicks. Russell's father was supposed to present him with his last badge, but he doesn't, so Carl steps in and hands Russell the Ellie badge, a grape soda badge that Ellie gave him when they first met. The Spirit of Adventure is tethered over them as they sit on a sidewalk in front of an ice cream shop, with Carl serving as Russell's fictitious grandfather. Carl and Ellie's home in Paradise Waterfall is exactly where it was supposed to be, on the cliff overlooking the waterfall. Well, that's all for today's video. We hope you enjoyed it, and please support us by subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to get notification for new videos every we post.